I'm Ann Balsamo. I'm from the University of Southern California. I'm the managing director of the Institute for Multimedia Literacy, and I also have a faculty appointment in interactive media and gender studies. And I've been a long-time participant in HASTAC efforts. And for that long-time service, I got assigned to this nearly impossible task. I think I was out of the room one time. And when they were making up the agenda, and this was the task I was given. Take 12 of our best and brightest speakers who have talked to us over the last couple days and summarize everything that they've had to say in pithy ways, and make sure that you draw lots of rich interfaces and intersections between their work. And then, by the way, could you do a mind map of the entire thing? And I'll do it in an hour. So. Well, I can take an idea and complicate it like nobody's business, which of course is what I did in this case, because that to me seemed like a pretty wide open invitation. So I made up a game. And I have asked the 12 participants up here to come along with this adventure and play this game with us together and with our studio audience. So we have a game, and this game is called Learning to Love the Questions. We have 2 teams, 6 each. I might call them the Alpha team and the Omega team, but I could just call them Team Aniston and Team Jolie, but that would be too lowbrow for this crowd, I'm afraid. Okay, now keep in mind, I did just make this game up, so if it's a little fuzzy around the edges, consider it a Dadaist kind of experiment. Okay, the first team will be question responders. The second team will be answer enhancers. When you are the question responders, which we did the coin toss, and this is the Alpha team, and they are going to be the question responders, you will have, the 6 of you, will have the choice of questions that have been carefully prepared in advance as I was sitting through the various panels that I had participated or watched over the last couple days. And these questions will give you a choice of 2. You pick them. You don't know. No one knows what the questions are in advance. You pick the question, and they'll read them, and they'll decide among themselves who's going to be the respondent for the team. And so they give a response. And let's see, I can give you an example of one. Okay, so here's an example of a question. What is the role of text in a digital age? Okay, well, we won't ask that question now because I just gave that to you, because that would be unfair. So they can pick a respondent who will respond. Then, after the response, the answer enhancers will get together and they'll go, wow, there was a really good idea in that response, and Caitlin Fisher is going to mind map the good ideas right here. Or the answer enhancers could say, wow, to do that, we really need more resources. And so she'll map resources over here. Or the answer enhancers could say, oh, an important next step is, and then she'll put the next steps over here. So we're going to get to a mind map, Kathy, because you wanted a mind map. We're going to get to a mind map. Okay. No, that's a step, David. It's a step. You got to work with me here. Okay. So that's the basic gameplay. 3 questions each side. So the responders will have 3 questions. Again, they'll be random, and then we'll switch sides, and then the answer enhancers will have 3 questions. And then Ian Bogust, who will be our audience interface device. So Ian will pass along cards for audience members, and we will have, of course, the sudden death round where audience questions can be posed to panel Alpha, panel Omega. Let's see, so I've got Caitlin. Oh, and Noah is going to try to keep us on time, because every round really can only last 7 minutes. So you guys, you got to really talk, really, you got to kind of get in there, be pithy, cut to the chase. But, you know, we'll get some questions out. Okay, so yes, this is a little bit of an experiment. It hasn't been play tested. It hasn't, in fact, it's never even been worked through in public before, but we're going to get started. Okay. Okay, so are you ready? Are you guys ready? Okay, okay, that's all we need to know. So for your first question, they're very nervous about these questions. Okay, so here's your question. How do we define a better job? Thanks.
Calm down. You're the next contestant on.
Circle around them.
How do we define a better job? So the point was, there are many points during the last couple days where people have said, we have to do a better job, we have to do a better job. And so, anything. Okay, we've got an answer. Or we've got a response. They're not answers. They're responses. Okay. Oh, here. Okay.
We decided to reframe the question as to how do we do a better job at improving the interface? And the answer is, based on Rebecca Allen's talk last night and kind of work we do in our panel, is let's transform the keyboard screen interface to be more of a physical, natural, gestural interface. And if we work towards that, we will start doing a better job of making technology more ubiquitous in our lives. And it started with cell phones and things like that.
Okay. Yes, Anna, the answer enhancer.
That's a great idea. And what's great about the idea is that it moves us to making technology designed around human usage as opposed to making humans have to adapt to technology. So I think that is a great idea.
There you go.
But it needs resources.
Good. What kind of resources?
We'll have to think about that.
It needs resources to make it less expensive, so that way it can be more accessible to more people and not just to a small bracket who can now afford gestural technology and the rest who are still stuck with a mouse. I don't know if everyone got that.
Got it. Okay.
But this is only the next step. Because it's well known from psychology that communication is not just by face and gestures, but by whole body. So you really need to capture the whole body motion.
Good ideas. Okay, we have another question or statement or something.
Okay, the next question is give the humanists a piece of advice. It's not a question, though.
Give the humanists.
That's an imperative, not a question.
Oh, good. There we go. Great.
Okay.
The humanists, I don't know, maybe it's educators as much as that, but there was this stuff about bringing all this technology into the classroom. Well, technology actually, for me, is most useful when you're trying to get people at a distance to do something together or whatever. When you got people in the same place, for crying out loud, do live performance or jazz or art or acting or something, not technology.
Yeah, that's our team. Go team.
Yeah, go team.
All right.
Answer enhancers.
And the next step to that,
I think it's a good, yeah, go ahead.
You think it's a good idea? Okay, we think
I think it's a good idea. But I also would say that technology is only the infrastructure that facilitates communication. The humanities, and I'm speaking as an engineer, you have the power and the domain of putting the right content. And I really feel that we really need much more of the gentle, maybe estrogen-based content.
okay. Okay. Estrogen supplements. Okay. What? Oh, sorry. A next step.
The next step. We need to change the acronym of STEM to STEMA. STEMAH. So it's science, technology, engineering, math, arts, and humanities.
Ah. Okay. Oh, okay, that's a good one. Yeah.
Okay, the question is, what worries you locally, institutionally, professionally? So that's actually 3 questions.
In one, yeah.
What worries you locally, institutionally, professionally? Well, some comments were that institutions or educational institutions, there's a lot of working, discussion, innovation, but there isn't the building and the kind of completing and of stuff to use. So he was saying there's he said that there aren't the tools that are actually finally usable. I mean, there's discussion about it and there's talks about innovation. So that was a worry. But add something to it, please.
Just the other thing is sort of commercialization of education. My kids are coming home with these little coupons for, our school is sponsoring free pizza night at or discount pizza night at such and such restaurant. I'm thinking, is this what I sent my kids to school for? Anyway.
I want to add one more too, which is to echo what Dan had said earlier, which is the way in which stuff gets used, the kind of gee whiz factor, where I see this on my campus, so institutionally and locally for me, people say, oh, we're doing this research, we should just turn it into a game because kids learn from games really well, and it gets their attention. As if making a really good game that people want to play is an easy thing, right? And you go to the game store and the shelves are filled with games that nobody's going to buy because most of them are failures. So even if you do it professionally without educational objectives, it's really, really hard to make a good game. So I think the idea that people think this is somehow going to be easy, and if you just, the field of dreams, if you just build it, they'll come.
Oh, wait, I've got one too. Good. All right, I thought of another thing too that really worries me is the expectation that I am available and online to respond to people instantly. It really worries me. It means that we no longer have a culture of sitting quietly and thinking, but we have a culture of instant response.
Good job. Because it's making the job 24/7.
No.
Wow.
Damn thing off, okay?
You can't, if you don't answer in 3 hours, then you get the second email.
I have 10 years of experience. I can tell you for certain, turn it off, okay? Set expectations, I'm very,
Well, yeah, so the idea is to just let people know. It's
Yeah,
not
you
going
let
to-
people know, and the thing rings, you don't pick it up if you don't want to pick it up. I mean, just grow up. Is my answer to that one.
Says the man who doesn't sit next to people all day long, dropping in his office.
Okay.
Yeah, I get thousands of emails a day. I don't read them all.
Okay, answer enhancers, Leb.
These are all great ideas. Just want to sort of add something to Rebecca's Allen wonderful comment. I noticed when I've been at UC San Diego for 10 years, every single little tiny grant we give you is start a project and we'll kind of seed it, and then you can go and get money elsewhere. But as humanities people, we know that there's practically no money elsewhere, right? So why don't somebody be smart enough to actually fund the completion of a project or implementation, so we wouldn't end up like with endless prototypes,
That's interesting. Oh, good idea. Great. Yes. Excellent. Thank you.
Those were great ideas, and what worries me locally, institutionally or professionally, is knee-jerk reactions to social technologies, such as Wikipedia, social networks. Instead of running to ban them, we should reach out and figure out how to use them and leverage them, and teach the critical skills that will allow them to be used properly and within the context.
Regina, did you have?
What worries me is violence. And I would like to see this content that we put into our digital media reduce the violence.
Yes. Okay, that was your 3 questions. Now you guys go into answer enhancer mode. you guys go into question response mode. So, pick a question. This isn't yours yet. Ah, there we go. Violence. Yeah. Put it as.
The question is, how do you learn best?
How do you learn
How do
best?
you
The
learn
question is,
best?
how do you learn best? And I realize this is a personal, so everyone could answer this. I mean, you don't have to come up with one answer for the whole group, but. Okay, we have an answer, we have a response.
All right, so we as a group came to the consensus that experimentation is really a key way for people to learn through trial and error, through listening, through reaction to the comments and ideas that other people bring to the table. So to the extent that technology can support experimentation as opposed to kind of cram information down people's throats, I think we'll be better off.
And added to that is the fact that we have to be willing to disagree, because when two people agree on everything, one of them is not necessary. So you have to be willing to disagree and to be creative and constructive criticism.
And just to add to that, one of the reasons design has become probably the most influential cultural field in this decade is that everybody wants designers to teach them their own methods of learning, which is rapid prototyping, right? The ability to prototype ideas in one day, test them, and go to new ideas, which, given the PhD dissertation process and book writing process, we're like kind of doing the opposite.
Any other comments? Answer enhancers? I see a next step.
If experimentation is the key to learning, let's reduce the risk of failure. Right now, the teacher asks a question, all the kids quake in their boots, raise their hand, they get it wrong, they're, ostracized. This is experimentation? I don't think so.
Kevin, good idea?
Yeah. Well, was it a question?
Okay, maybe it's a next
Good
step.
idea. Next step, it was one of them. I was thinking that, something that John Seeley, I think, said, both in teams working together, but also doing, a more experiential, approach to it.
I think also, if we value experimentation, finding a way to measure it effectively so that people don't rely exclusively on standardized testing as the only way to measure what's happening in an educational environment. Not that I think standardized testing can tell us some things, but it can't tell us very much about experimentation or innovation. So I think replacing that with something else might be useful for us. Next step.
Okay. Henry, then Rebecca.
Not so much about secondary education, but higher education, and particularly how academics learn. I think on the idea about experimentation as a method for doing that, I think we do need funding to make it possible for there to be laboratories for people in the humanities to do this sort of thing collaboratively. It isn't really the normal way of doing things in the humanities. Mostly we're individual silos, we do things as personal projects, et cetera. To build a kind of structure for people to do things together and experiment, I think is going to take some funding.
And I'd love to see us work more on having mentors to, I can't do things by reading manuals and even online discussions. If I can talk ideally in person or have at least over the internet some kind of discussion with someone that knows about the topic that you're trying to learn about, I think to really establish a kind of system for mentoring, and mentors don't have to be older, they can be of any age, to just, I think this is a problem teachers have too, when they feel terrified with technology, if they could just have someone there having, as they're learning, doing, I think doing is very important, but someone there just to answer all those questions that allow you to keep moving forward, to get over that initial hump of trying to understand something for the first time.
Next step, okay. Answer enhancer?
That was a good idea and a next step on top of that. I think, like probably many of us in the room, I learn best by teaching. And if we can create more situations where we're teaching each other, and even in sort of low involvement or low expectation teaching, just simple tools where we can teach each other and create audiences, I think that'd be a very helpful thing.
Okay, second question for the team Elsa here. Give the funders a piece of advice. Okay. Can we get some?
So the question is, give the funders advice. Trust the PI.
We were trying to share the reply, but I was elected to say the main theme. What we think that the funders need is a vision of larger ideas, larger programs around which we can collectively aggregate. So in this context, for example, such a grand challenge would be understanding violence, what is the reason for it, and what can we do about it. That's one possible grand challenge. What do we really need to do, avoid what's happening today? The other comments from my colleagues were that we need sustainable support, which I think was said even before, not only startup prototypes, but sustainable, and also idea-driven, not just what's the NIH parlor is outcome-driven, or so idea-driven.
Okay, we can add to it?
Sure, add to it.
Well, I mean, looking at all the what's foundation is doing digital humanities, I think it's all very good, but the freshest thing I've seen was when NIH kind of startup, right? Startup funds, which I think were kind of deliberately using Silicon Valley language, and to me looked really fresh. And I would say that I don't think foundations should trust humanists, because assuming that we have any idea what we're doing, let's take best practices which work and implement them. Why not hire Jimmy Wales, the CEO of Wikipedia, to create a kind of Wikipedia for academics, where all the people and students and faculty can contribute pieces of their knowledge. For example, I mean, the idea of startups, right? Like, where you have an incubator with marketing people, web designers, the way vectors are doing it. So basically, let's just take best practices which work, as opposed to, well, that's my own opinion, as opposed to trusting humanists who have no idea what we're doing, including myself.
Okay.
And I disagree with that, because obviously you would get a sort of bandwagonism, and then you don't allow for innovation and creativity. So you have to have not just best.
When is the last time you saw innovation in humanities? Like 1962?
But the funding
Answer enhancers.
So an answer enhancer would be that we desperately need the funders to collaborate and basically form a HASTAC within their own community.
Collaborative around that. Okay.
Yeah.
Other
The funders.
comments? Next steps? Or yeah, Rebecca.
We were talking about the system of reviewing things, and often they're peer-reviewed, but that can also tend to narrow things down or have a certain kind of perspective, and funders may just look at, I was suggesting possibly just to say a certain percentage of funding is for just risky stuff that, wild stuff that may or may not work, but to keep fueling these kind of new ideas without having people to prove before they even do what they're doing that it's going to work. So just to really dedicate some funding to risk-taking.
I heard a really good idea in the grand challenges. I guess what I'm learning, I'm new to a lot of this academic funding stuff was what I'm learning is that they are institutions that preserve values in a kind of a weird way. So they should realize this when they're, yeah, like they're starting to, the value of open source and sharing data and stuff like that is getting into the funding agencies as far as I can tell, and that's the way they get perpetuated.
Yes?
Let me just add
Ian,
one
we're
more
gonna
little thing, and that is that as far as Washington is concerned, the federal funding is unfortunately divided by the National Science Foundation, which funds science, engineering, and social science and economics, not the humanities and not the arts. And then we have NEH and we have NIH, and this group wants a funding agency where we collectively will find a home. And unfortunately, that hasn't happened. So while we on the grounds are ahead of Washington, the federal funding, and God bless the private foundations who are actually stepping in and helping us, but what we really need as taxpayers to convince the Washington that there is a new era, new time, where engineers and computer scientists and humanists are coming together, and we need funding for the interdisciplinary work.
Yeah.
Good idea, yes?
Another good idea I heard in there, Ted Nelson, the guy that invented the term hypertext, talks about the pre and post, when movies were first made, they were made by the guy who knew how to run a camera, the technologist. And then there was this revolution when we had this guy called the director who knows how to tell a story. Guy, I'm from the Midwest, it's okay. But anyway, yeah, I mean, and in the computer software era, we're still in the pre-director era, you know, where the technologists are driving the dang, you know, how we interact with each other with these machines.
Little enhancement. Well, maybe also it's relevant to recall that I personally think the whole term technologist is maybe, you know, misguiding us. The key developments which led to a change from computer as a calculator to cultural machine were invented by people who were basically intellectuals, who knew philosophy, music, history, art. Ted Nelson was a writer. He wanted a better technology to do experimental writing, and he invented hypertext. Alan Kay was doing music all his time, you know, looking at psychology. The guy who invented Macromedia Director, you know, precursor to Flash, which made multimedia possible, was an opera singer. You know, so now, can we do it now? Can humanists actually invent equally fundamental technologies? Well, I don't know, but it's really inspiring and maybe instructive to look at this history and to realize that the key cultural IT technologies were invented not by sort of, you know, not by nerds, but by humanists.
Okay, we have a question from actually two questions from the audience, and we're going to, this is our sudden death round before we do one last question. But the question from the audience, and what I'd like to do is have each of the panelists on either team respond to the question. So we'll just go along. So the two questions that you could respond to, you can pick your question, because they're flips of each other. What helps humanists and technologists collaborate best? Or the flip side is, what crushes the spirit of collaboration among or between humanists and technologists? So let's start here.
My armchair reaction to what brings humanists and technologists together is simply an interesting problem that kind of creates passion and gets people excited about working together. And kind of tying back into the prior kind of what can help funding agencies is I would say hire some creative writers for the RFPs that go out, because oftentimes these requests for proposals are kind of really hard to get through. And if there was really a nice, clean, elegant way to get people passionate and excited, I think that the humanists and the technologists would be willing to overcome some of their disciplinary hang-ups to work together.
coming from a background where I helped humanists put their work online at a place called iBiblio, I've seen a lot of the friction that's emerged because of tools and because we speak different languages and because we have different expectations. And in the past couple of years, with the advent of blogs and click and point-and-click publishing, that sort of thing, a lot of the barriers to entry have come down. And so I think that rather than harping on the past and the language difficulties and how we're not speaking the same languages, I sort of take a very positive view of the future and think that the tools that we're going to have in our hands that are going to enable structures of participation are really going to create new ways for us to come together as humanists and technologists.
In my experience, the biggest difficulty collaborating with humanists is, at least in academia, and remember I live in academia for last, hate to tell you how many years, is the fact that the reward system is very different for humanists, where you have to write a book if you want to be promoted. For an engineer, it's a very different measure. We are measured by the impact that we make on our community and industry.
Well, yeah, I completely agree. It's a great idea, and I'd like to enhance it. I think that I find it's very difficult, if not impossible, to collaborate with scientists because we're under tremendous pressure, to get their grants, to keep their labs going, right? Because people spend, we don't get any money, but when, we're not expected to bring money, whereas, right, scientists, spend half of their lives writing grants and trying to get their things published, so you come to them and they're just super busy. So I think that the places which made it right, again, like Vectors, where we hired 2 top commercial designers, right? So, and that's why you have good quality projects. So in a proposal which we put out to our institution from a new center, okay, software studies, whatever, we said, okay, give us 1 postdoc in humanities and 1 postdoc in computer science, so we have these people full time, as opposed to sort of trying with, going with like, trying to get like, 5 seconds of faculty or PhD students who are already so busy. So we need to have, high level, people kind of working for us or with us, as opposed to trying to sort of get 5 seconds of time with people who basically, spending all the times, already working.
I think one of the barriers to collaboration is maybe methodological superiority, feelings like your methodology is better than mine. And I think so there needs to be a mutual respect for how people do their research. So for the quantitative analysts, the numbers crunchers, and the interpretive humanists, that we respect each other's paradigms. And I also think that one of the things that enhances collaboration is that mutual respect, but also the reward system within the universities, and the privileging of the sciences over the humanities is a persistent problem. The NEH gets very little funding, the NEA compared to the sciences, and I think it's about time that we recognize that we have to have both.
Again, speaking from my own position as the younger scholar, I think that what's key to this issue is what we were talking about in the last panel, intergenerational collaboration, because often I find that I work on these interdisciplinary projects at the graduate level, and then the cohort after me won't know what I've done because sustainable practices and infrastructure hasn't been developed between faculty and graduate students, except in these very isolated pockets, and that we need to think in more of a networked mode of interdisciplinarity, that we're going to communicate to the next generation our project and what we've learned from crossing these methodological boundaries, and not just taking that knowledge and then using it for our own next project, but trying to think about how to communicate these and share these resources.
Okay, and before I go, we do have a clarification or an insertion from someone in the audience, and which will make your answers all that more complex. Could we please problematize the humanist-technologist dichotomy? because, as rightly argued, many of us work in the humanities and we do not consider ourselves to be humanists. Humanism has a history, one that we're accountable to, but not something that we identify with in a simple or uncomplicated way. So it's maybe about collaboration, and maybe collaboration in teams that maybe don't share a history. So let's operationalize it. People who don't share a history, who don't share a common vocabulary, or people who do, but they've come from different life experiences, and so it's the first time collaborating on something. Question is, what hinders or what supports that kind of collaboration? Yeah.
Getting people from various disciplines together is always difficult because of, for a lot of reasons, and I think if there's a project that really requires these various disciplines, it forces people who maybe are uncomfortable working with someone from another discipline to have to work, because the common goal is to finally come up with whatever this project requires or product requires. And I think that's the only way to get people to work together, is if it's clear to them, for them to be successful in their own work, they have to somehow figure out how to relate to these other disciplines because they need them so badly to complete this project.
So I'm representing a place called the Stanford Humanities Laboratory, and I'll say a couple sentences about our thinking around this word laboratory as a way of thinking about this kind of collaboration. We have a mission to be transdisciplinary, and we try to and have included scientists who work with us. And where we've come with this idea of the laboratory, which is, of course, kind of a techno-scientific construct in a way, at least the way we look at it now, is to focus a little more on the labor part of it and the idea of people working together in a laboratory, not necessarily at the same bench, but possibly at different benches, working on different things, but maybe with some core themes that are of interest to people at these different benches, which will make it interesting for them to look over the shoulders of other people and talk about what they're doing. That's kind of our idea of how to encourage conversations between people coming from different disciplines. We're stuck a little bit, and we're trying to think through the issues around making that actually happen. That's the difficulty involved with that. But I think we see now that a lot of people are talking about laboratories and co-laboratories and so on as one way of thinking about an institutional structure that would invite people from different disciplines together.
Yeah.
Okay. Making this quick, I think most of the points have been made, what I was thinking about, but I wanted to augment the concept of Jonathan and Rebecca. You have the grassroots approach and the top-down. Top-down is what's the reward structure, and the grassroots approach is projects, and how do you get interested behind projects. And I believe that the way to cross this divide is to circumvent the language issue by using more universal language and communicating more with visuals and in a more easily accessible way to understand concepts, whereas in the sciences we communicate through mathematics. In the humanities, you communicate through words, and I feel like communicating through visuals and visualization has helped bridge this gap to a large extent.
There's two things I want to say. One comes from a conversation I had with Anne earlier, which was we have really different, from the humanities and technology, we have really different perspectives sometimes on even what funding means. Where if I went to a colleague of mine in the Department of English and said, here's an opportunity for $25,000, they would just about fall over, right? That's a lot of money to somebody in the English department. If I went to my colleagues in engineering and said, here's a grant for $25,000, they'd say, what am I going to do with that? So, I mean, there's completely different points of view about those kind of things. I also had the opportunity to work as, the NSF did something really mean to the engineers, which is for a Science and Technology Center proposal, they demanded that they have an ethicist, right? And I got to be that for this project, or the attempt at this project. And what I found really interesting was they thought that was something that could be compartmentalized. And they would say, okay, we're going to do this. We'll do the distributed robotics here. We'll do the nanotechnology here. And Doug, you go do the ethics, right? And it took me a long time to explain to them that, no, that's something that you all do too, right? So it was a very interesting kind of way to explain to them.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, sorry,
Go ahead.
sorry. And you'll be the last one before we turn to Rujana.
Shake it up. It's the only the thing that works in my experience. The friction comes from people having specialized knowledge and trying to wield it, and so you shake it up until they find something in common. Go play baseball, drink beer, do something else is what works in my experience.
And the last question is for Rujana, and the question is: tell us about your project.
Thank you very much. I begged for at least 1 minute to share with you what I am trying to build is a collaborative technology where you can be imaged in without any markers, anything, as you are, and moving and creating a virtual immersive environment from you being there. And I connected with another laboratory at the University of Illinois, which has a similar capabilities, and the video should show you 2 dancers, one in Illinois, Renata Shepard, and one at Berkeley, dancing remotely, but dancing together in synchrony in this virtual environment. And I have many other examples of this technology, but I thought that this one really will show you that how this technology can be shown for beauty and love and kindness and, you know, the estrogen idea. This is a collaboration with dance department, and are we on the end of it? It should. Okay, it's coming. It was a performance in December, and we have actually today another performance. Okay. So these are real dancers, and you will see them. This is dancer at Berkeley. Dancer from Illinois. This is virtual touch. As you see, the technology is not perfect. think we can stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I just want to say thank you to the panelists and Noah and Caitlin and Ian for being the game team. And thank you to the audience for your indulgence with this experiment. And I guess we're ready for lunch. Thank you.